Greetings, everyone. My name is Shawani Howard-Baptiste, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Vice President of Programming for the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education. We are very, very excited today to have Dr. Moten with us. She is an experienced speaker and addresses so much information and support around mental health for children, families, and communities. She is phenomenal. She is highly recommended by our own board member and activist, Dr. Roland Smith, and she is going to be talking about mental health today. Certainly, we are listening to our membership and have heard from you and have been working for the last couple of months now to ensure that we had a phenomenal speaker before you to share more insight about mental health for ourselves, for our families, and for our students. So the title of her presentation today is Minding Your Business is to Mind Your Business. So I will turn it over to Dr. Moten, author and founder of the Moten Way. Thank you so much, Dr. Moten, for being with us today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good morning. First, I would love to just thank the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education for having me. I think this is such an important cause, and I hope today I can leave you with some helpful information that will just guide your journey. Now, first, a little bit more about me. I've been in higher ed over 17 years. So from America to London, my last role, I was a director of learning and teaching at the University of East London. And now I am back in America, and I am a full-time mental health consultant and advocate. And so I just want to make sure people know that it is okay to mind your mind. You know, minding your business is to mind your mind. How did I become a mental health advocate? I was a caregiver of my mother for over 14 years who had schizophrenia. And in that journey, I learned a lot of different lessons that I hope I can share with you today. Next slide. So here are my ground rules. You know, all of us that work in higher education typically wear a cape. We are off to save our students. We are off to find solutions. We are off to solve the problem. But in this moment, in this next 45 minutes, I want to ask that you remove your cape. During this time is just for you. It's an opportunity for you to release your superpowers and sit them on the shelf for now. So if you can, take off your cape. And yes, I'm talking to you. You haven't moved yet. But take off your cape and digest the words that I am going to say to you. The reason why I spend a lot of time about looking at taking off the cape is because I too, as a student affairs professional, went through a difficult journey. In that journey, I was caregiving for my mother, I was caring for my family, and I was working at the community college full time. During that journey, I was also in grad school full time. Then I was dismissed from the program because I did not know how to ask for help. During that journey of maintaining that I was well and I could do everything, I began to crack. And during that crack, I actually tried to take my life. Now, here it is. I thought about how would they explain this to my students? How would they, what would the college do? But I just didn't know how to ask for help. I was so overwhelmed and so used to being the solution to everything. I became disheartened when I didn't have a solution for my own mental health. Sometimes, as higher education professionals, we go through a series of routine where we have to think about the students first. And that is our job. That's what we do. But in the same breath, I want you to adopt that it's okay to take care of you while you're taking care of students. Next slide. You have to value who you are and your contribution to the institution, your contribution to your family, and most of all, the contribution to yourself. Now, I know we're supposed to be talking about mental health, but mental health begins with valuing your journey. If you don't take the moment to value your journey, then you lose the contribution of you. You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness by Brene Brown. In these moments of uncertainty, in the moments of the way the world is changing, natural disasters, things are not only impacting our students, but they are impacting us as well. And these are the conversations that we neglect to have. Next slide. Today, I'm going to talk to you about minding your mind. We're going to go over the roadblocks, we're going to go over the approach, and we're going to go over the power. Next slide. I know a lot of times as you're going through your journey as a higher education professional, sometimes life is happening outside of your role. And when life is happening outside of your role, that's when it begins to feel heavy because now we know the road is blocked. Next slide. Some of the blocks of higher education is high stress levels, especially with a lot of deadlines, you know, being asked to accomplish the unthinkable. And even when we get that deadline, it feels like the unthinkable, but somehow we always manage to meet the deadline or meet the demand or increase enrollment. Whatever the pressures are, it creates high stress. Higher education professionals, including professors, administrators, and support staff, often face high levels of stress due to factors such as heavy workloads, publishing pressures, grant applications, and student-related issues. What happens when that high stress level affects you? It brings you to depression and anxiety. In my own journey as a higher education professional, the weight of my role and the responsibility I had and the many different hats I wore created an unnatural amount of stress. In addition to the stress I had at work, as a caregiver at home and navigating being in graduate school, I succumbed to the pressure because it was like I was piling it on brick by brick. How many of you are piling on things brick by brick? And before you know it, we think that resilience has everything to do with how much you can carry, or how much can be packed on your load, when in actuality, resilience is not about how much you can carry. Resilience is having the courage to ask for help and the willingness to accept support when it is given to you. High stress levels lead to depression and anxiety, and studies have shown that depression and anxiety is very prevalent in higher education professionals. Next slide. Other roadblocks include, but are not limited to, the burnout rate. There has been a alarming turnover in higher education professionals because they're just burnt out. After walking through the journey of transitioning through COVID and then transitioning back to in person, it has caused a lot of burnout, anxiety, depression, impact on job satisfaction. All of these roadblocks have caused us to pause and ask ourselves the question, is higher ed where I need to be? Is this a profession that I can continue to live a healthy life and enjoy what I do most? And that's supporting and giving back to the students of the institution. Next slide. There's some other roadblocks that typically affect our mental health as higher ed professionals, and that is gender and racial disparities and access to mental health services. How many of you know what your institution offers as mental health support? And if you don't know what your institution offers as mental health support, why not? A lot of times we have our benefits, but we neglect to use them because we don't give enough time to ourselves or we don't value our own contribution to what we do. We don't value our own contribution to ourselves, so we neglect taking care of our mind. Minding your business, minding who you are as a higher education professional has everything to do with minding and caring for your mind. Next slide. I want to give you a strategy to navigate the roadblocks. Number one, you got to identify what's the gift of the block road. A lot of times I thought, I was working at a community college in Texas, and this was right before I was leaving to head to London. And I thought, you're going to let go of this role to go into this new role in a totally different country. But I had to identify what was the gift of me transitioning from the community college to the university in another country. It was going to open up my eyes to a whole new way of life. It was going to expand the way I think about world issues. Once I arrived at the campus in London, I was a director of learning and teaching at the University of East London. And when I arrived, a week later, they had a layoff. They were laying off 90 people. And little did I know, I was one of those 90 people. And when I asked them why would they still invite me over, they said, we didn't think you would come. Little did I know, I started off as a director of learning and teaching of the business and the law school. And through the layoff process, I had to apply for another role. I became the director of learning and teaching for the university. Sometimes when it initially get the news, it's like, what's happening? You know, everything is blocked. How am I going to get out of here? I'm in a whole new country. What do I do next? Sometimes it's identifying what are the gifts of the block road. The gifts for me was career advancement, um, and still having the opportunity to be in a space in another country where I could still learn and complete my research. Examine your thinking. Sometimes as you're walking through storms of life, and they come, I had no control over being laid off. I had no control over my mother having schizophrenia, but I had to look and see, how am I going to be the best version of myself, no matter what roads are blocked? And part of that was avoiding seeing the crisis as insurmountable problems. Take a minute and take a breath. How often are you breathing? Change the steps towards the goal. If you would have told me over 18 years ago when I first started in higher education that I would be living in another country and over their learning and teaching and training faculty and being responsible for student retention, progression, I'd have told you, no, not me. I'm never leaving Texas. Being in another country and changing the way I thought about all of the challenges that were coming my way, even from losing my mom, even from losing other loved ones through the journey, I still had to be intentional with the way I thought about it. And what was it going to take to get the support that I need to navigate what's being thrown at me? Let me ask you a quick question. How often are you asking for help, whether it be personal and professional, to get you in the space that you need so you can keep moving? Now, I will be honest with you. There were moments in my life where I got to the roadblock and I assumed it was the end. How many of you get to a roadblock and assume it's the end? The roadblock is not the end. The roadblock will take you on a beautiful detour that you didn't even know existed. Now, I live in Houston, so we're under construction all the time. And there's always these detours. And every detour that I take here, I find a whole new way, a neighborhood or a business that I didn't know what was there. I need you in this moment to embrace the detour. Can you repeat after me? Can you just type in the comment section? Embrace the detours. Embracing the detours gives you the space and the grace for yourself to say, it is okay to take care of my mind. I'm going to mind my business by minding my mind. When you embrace the detours, you embrace new strategies to even help students, faculty, and staff connect with things they never thought was even possible. It all starts with the way we think. You are worth the value of your journey. You are worth support. You are worth help. Be open to allow the detour to guide you to exactly where you are supposed to be. Next slide. Can you break through the approach? Can you break through? I don't know about you, but there have been moments in my career, in moments in my life, where I get even through the detour and I'm still uncertain as I'm going through the detour. Am I going to get to my destination? Am I going the right way? I don't know how many of you use GPS or Waze, but Waze will tell you if there is a speed trap ahead. It will tell you if there is a stalled vehicle on the right side of the road. It will tell you all of these things. But sometimes in our careers and our professional life, I wish we had that. I wish we had that. I wish I could know that the car is going to break down. I wish I could know that this is what's going to happen. They're going to restructure us again. I wish I could know what is ahead. Before I go into the approach, I need you to know it's not up to you to break through. You don't need to break through. As long as you go with the approach, as long as you go with the strategy of navigating the roadblock, it is not meant for you to break through. It's meant for you to just embrace the detour and ask and get support all along the journey. Next slide. Here are some approaches to minding your mind. Self-awareness. That is such a gift. Be aware of yourself. Sometimes we spend our time being so busy because we are afraid to embrace who we are. Embrace the gift of you. The gift of you to the institution, the gift of you to your family, the gift of you being in the space that you occupy. Wherever you are right now, I want you to pause and look around. Look around the room. Acknowledge the space that you occupy. That space that you occupy is the space that you eat. You have to take time and reflect on what you're feeling. You have to reflect on where do you feel weakness and what else is there that you need. And how you do that is you practice self-care. Practicing self-care can be a lot of things. It may be you're in the office and you take a 5-minute walk, or you use that leave to take time off when needed. Sometimes I think as higher education professionals, we get so caught up in a cycle of taking care of everyone else, we neglect taking care of us. And in that part of taking care of you, you have to reflect on what is it that you need to be recharged. Whether it's going for a white robe experience or a facial or just sitting by water. I love to go and sit by water. Embracing self-care is how I started to navigate to get myself back mentally well. Now, as you're on a journey of minding your mind, practicing taking care of you is essential to minding your mind. Stress management is essential to minding your mind. Sometimes I go on YouTube and I pull up different ways to breathe. And for me, there's also an app called Calm. I download different apps, different approaches to being able to manage the stress that comes at us daily. There are stresses that come to you that you can control, and there are stresses that come to you that you can't control. And last but not least, seek support. I know all of you are sitting in a chair, right? When you sat down in the chair that you're sitting in, you sat in that chair confidently and boldly. Why? Put in the chat, why did you sit where you're seated now? What made you sit in the chair that you're sitting in? You sat where you're seated because you believe it would support you. You believe that that chair was going to hold you. You believe that chair was going to be comfortable through this presentation. You believe that that chair had everything you needed for the next hour because you have sat in this chair time after time and you knew it was going to support you through. I want you to think of your mind as that chair. I want you to think about the pillars of support that you need on a daily basis. And anytime you think about minding your mind, I want you to have a seat. Have a seat in your support. Have a seat in the gift of having a therapist. Have a seat in the gift of having a friend who has a code word when you go to those dark spaces. Have a seat in the comfort of knowing you have other peers that you can talk to when things are not going so well. What does your chair of support look like? And do you have enough? I'm going to ask you again. What does your chair of support look like? And do you have enough? Next slide. The power. What are you plugged into? You know, I could easily, I cut off this light, everything goes dark. And when I cut it back on, there's light. Did you know? If you are not plugged into a power source, there's not going to be any power coming to you. Whatever that power source may be, if you are not plugged in, you will not have power. My fellow colleagues, you deserve to be energized. You deserve to be able to expand your career and grow and embrace life and embrace your journey in your career. Being plugged into a power source that continues to keep you thriving, that continues to keep the light on. What is it about that may need a little bit more power? What is it about your career that may a little bit more energy? You deserve to plug into a source that ignites who you are as a person. Not just talking about the higher education profession, but you are worth the effort. You are worth the investment. Ever since I started going through the journey of therapy, I have learned to embrace the space I occupy and be intentional with how I do my work, how I show up for others, but more so, how do I show up for myself? It's okay for you to take off the cape every now and then. It's okay for you to mind your mind. Because once you master minding your mind, once you embrace that you have a chair of support you can confidently sit on and know and feel supported, that is when you are inspired and encouraged to mind your business. If you don't remember anything else I said, the value of you is beyond any title. The value of you is beyond any accolade. The value of you first begins with you having the courage and the boldness to mind your mind. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Moten. You have provided so much insight for all of us to really think about and think through, really for the rest of the day. We did have a couple of questions, so if it's okay, I would like to pose those to you. And for those joining us, please feel free to utilize the chat so that we can ask Dr. Moten these questions. So the first question is, and again, this is from folks who've registered and submitted questions. The first question is, how can we best support students who need more and more, but still set boundaries for our own well-being? What are some great strategies to say no when so much is being asked of us as individuals, particularly women and those with young children, in ways to maintain boundaries without impacting our individual self in a negative manner?
Okay. Well, I'll start with first thing first. How do we meet the needs of our students in the current? If you don't know this already, we are in a mental health crisis. We are in a mental health crisis. We are, it used to be, I want to say 2017, the age of suicide completion for youth was age 15 to 25. Now the age is age 10 to 34. We are definitely, and it used to be one person every 14 minutes. Now it's one person every 25 seconds.
Ooh.
It used to be one person every 14 minutes, and now it's one person every 25 seconds. For those of you that don't know, I was the former Deputy Executive Director of the National Alliance of Mental Illness for Central Texas, so we service about 8 counties. My advice to higher ed professionals is to partner with entities that have the resources and the support. So say, for instance, if you know there's a lot of different charities that offer therapy at a sliding scale, because if you look, there's more advertisement for mental health support because we as a society need more mental health support. So if I would encourage higher ed professionals not to, in turn, let me figure out how I can give the student exactly what they need. It's important for us as institutions, especially community college institutions that are located in the community. It's important for us to be able to um, partner with community organizations so that we can have a pathway of services into our institutions that we may not be ready to offer. And so it's just being aware of what's available around, um, connecting with United Way, knowing what resources can we connect students to without being the answer. I think somehow as higher ed professionals, we get caught up in being the answer of all. And sometimes the answer is finding the answer in the community and partnering with them to be a resource to our students. And the second part of that question was to, as a, was it as a woman,
Yeah,
setting
particularly
boundaries?
so a woman and those who might have children, how do you set boundaries without impacting your own individual self in a negative manner?
It is, I always tell people, if I took a piece of paper and I wrote down, what I give to my career and I tore it. And then I wrote down, what do I give to my family and I tore it. And then by the time I got to myself, I had something like this little sheet of paper
Mm.
left. So when you look at this little piece of paper, there's not much I can write on this, right? There's not much I can really do with this. And a lot of times we, especially as women, we have to be intentional with, I'm not saying I can't help or no, I'm saying this is what I can offer. Sometimes being that, giving what you can give and not giving all of you, I think that's why I had reached my breaking point, because I was giving all of me away. And when I thought about it, I had nothing left for myself. So there was nothing left to encourage me or to inspire me. So we have to be conscious. And I think men too. A lot of times men don't talk about what their needs are in the mental health world because as a society, we have made it to believe that's not what men do. I think as a society, whether you're a man or a woman, we all have to be conscious of what we're giving away. And we can't give, if you give everything away, then you won't have anything left to support you. And if you're not supported, then you can't be there for anyone. So the question you need to ask yourself, am I not going to be here for anyone? Because if you keep going that pattern with not setting boundaries, not setting limits, you end up close to where I was. And I don't want anyone to go there. So that's why I think it's important that you examine your support system and lean on it and sit on it, just like you're sitting in that chair. Lean on your support, ask for help.
That is such a great reflection. I think a lot of people can certainly identify with reaching that breaking point. We're seeing a lot of messages in the chat that this has just really been an inspiring and pivotal point for people to take in this insight. So thank you. The next question is, what are some methods of communicating boundaries when expectations continue beyond traditional work schedules and without the customary tools and resources to help justify performing your job responsibilities and duties?
I think it is forming a partnership with our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we communicate after the fact. Sometimes it is, going to your leader and saying, can we be partners in this? Can I express to you what's happening? I want to do everything you're asking me to do, but this is what I need as a support so I can accomplish this. You know, it may be hybrid working conditions. It may be there's a lot of different ways to get things done, but a lot of times we communicate at each other instead of saying, hey, can we have a conversation? I want to talk to you about a few ideas I have. A lot of times we come with the problem, but we don't have any solution. Go in the room. You are the higher education professional, which means we all have done a lot of school. And we've done a lot of school, meaning we know how to have conversations and describe what it is that we need. Hey, this is what I want to do for students. This is what I want to do for staff, but I need this to help me do it. Can we partner together and come up with a solution? Here are a few possible solutions that I have. What do you think about these? But we're just so caught up in routine that we miss the opportunity to communicate and have those conversations and bring your brilliance to the table. Stop hiding your brilliance. Leaders want to know your brilliant solution. Don't hide it. But sometimes we're afraid to even give the solution because we've been so down in this routine. I got to do this. I got to do this. No, they hired you because you have a solution, because you're great, because you're brilliant.
That is great perspective about bringing our brilliance to the conversation. And I think oftentimes when people come to us with suggestions, they've eliminated 30 minutes of the meeting because you've already come to the meeting, like you said, with your brilliance. You've come to the meeting with solutions to help strategize what support looks like. So again, great perspective. Our next question is, what recommendations do you have for identifying university resources for mental health?
I would actually start with the NAMI in your area. The National Alliance of Mental Illness is a great start. And number one, there's also a lot of entities that have partnered with universities. Society of Royals help with suicide prevention. But most of the NAMIs in your particular areas have the actual listing of things that are available. I don't know if different places have 211 or United Way, but all of those entities are resources that you can partner. I know here in Texas, we just launched 988, which is a suicide line, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And it's been helpful because it's a resource that everyone can use. And so I would say have a hot sheet. Whatever that hot sheet, whatever the issues are at your institution, have a hot sheet and have a direct, once you do the research once, you can share it with the team. And that way, it's a resource that you can continuously use. Don't go recreate the wheel. It's already there. And the government and the city governments, everyone know it's an issue. And so they are creating more resources that we just as higher ed professionals have yet to tap into.
One of the things that has come up in the chat, and I know there are many of us who struggle with this, is how do you ask for help? How do you start that conversation maybe with yourself in terms of minding our own business? How do we go to our supervisors or our team? How do we ask for help?
Let me give you a quick example. When I was kicked out of grad school, so first person in my family to go to college, first person in my family get kicked out of grad school, right? And so I was in grad school and I was studying, and I had entered as a conditional student, so I had to maintain a 3.5. But during the time I was taking care of my mom, I was walking through life, and I didn't know that the services and support and things that the university had were for me. A lot of times we neglect to understand that resources and support are there, not to just be resources and support. So the important lesson I learned, I got dismissed from the program with 2 classes left to graduate. So I had to start grad school all over again. And when I learned that lesson, sometimes we as I'm just going to say it. Sometimes we as Black people have been conditioned to believe that we don't ask for help. You don't ask for help because you got it. And so you don't want anyone to know or anyone to think that you need help. That means you're weak or you haven't accomplished anything. That's a lie. Hello? That is a lie. Sometimes if you can't ask for help with your mouth, you need to write it. Write it or speak to a colleague or speak to someone, because I struggle with that even now. It isn't something that you stop struggling with because it's something we're used to. It was the way I was brought up, actually. You can do it yourself. You got it. But sometimes if you can't ask it with your mouth, I need you to write it. I need you to write it down. I need help. And if you have a friend that you trust, ask them first. Hey, I need help figuring this out. And maybe they can help you come up with a plan to ask for help. But guess what? It starts with valuing you. The second you value you, the second you'll know you are worth the help. You are worth the help.
Oh, Dr. Q, we have so many notes that I know that I've personally taken during our time together in terms of just being resilient, utilizing the benefits at our professional jobs and resources there, really thinking about transitions and how do we use and utilize roadblocks as a gift to examine our thinking and our perspective and provide spaces for us to learn. We need to take a minute and take a breath. I think everyone is writing that down. We need to think about the roadblock not as the end, but a beautiful journey, and being open to the detour and embracing that detour. I think that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. As you had mentioned, that number, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is 988, and you can call or text 988. So we certainly appreciate you and the support and so much insight that you've given us. I also want to thank you just for being so willing to be vulnerable. At the very beginning, you shared, how you've taken care of your mother and supported your family, and in grad school and working and all of those things. And I think a lot of our membership and people that are tuning in and listening can certainly relate to that. So we don't take for granted that you have been so vulnerable and taken space to share your story, because it has certainly inspired others. So are there any final comments or thoughts from the chat? Someone put in the chat, as a higher ed professional, what tools can they use with students who refuse to take no for an answer on matters that are out of their control? What authority as well as requests that are simply not possible? These instances create high anxiety levels because they do want to provide the best service that they can for students, but some things are out of their control. So Dr. Moten, how do you, as a higher ed professional, what tools can we utilize to help students who are maybe unwilling or not being cooperative to receive that support?
Make them a part of the solution. A lot of times I would get students who, before I knew it, it was a real heated discussion. But I would bring the student in as, hey, well, let's find a different solution because I don't have an answer right now, but let's find an answer together. And sometimes that approach, making them a part of finding the solution, it will kind of lessen. But I need you to be aware there are a lot of mental health issues, and I'm not trying to get you to be out there diagnosing people because that's not what we do. But I need you to be aware that mental health is everywhere. And because of that, you may need to bring in reinforcements with someone else in the office so that you can navigate that student to the proper resource. But the proper resource is not always you. And it's okay that you're not the answer. So I need everyone to repeat after me today. I have made a decision.
I have made a decision.
I don't have to be the answer, but I am going to value what I bring to the institution and more so to myself.
Mm. we're pausing because we're all processing what you just said there. We have a couple more questions for the chat. So I just want to reiterate, Dr. Moten, that people are giving you high fives, virtual hugs, embracing therapy and your presentation and everything that you shared. Another question is how to motivate attendance when many students only want online classes, yet they're required to teach online. So how do we motivate attendance when many students only want online classes, but yet we're required to teach online?
Well, you have when you bring Chris Edmondson, he created, my research is the effects of inclusive approaches to teaching for first year Black, Asian, minority, ethnic students. And I did that research in England. And what I learned is when you bring in students into a partnership learning where their reality becomes a part of the learning, you have to change the way, and I even had to do this myself. I have to change the way I deliver education to students. I needed their realities to be in what I was teaching. And so I would bring in who they are into the classroom, whether it's virtual or in person, because students want to connect with those things that are authentically connecting to them. And so you just figure out different ways to be creative in bringing their reality into the classroom to be a part of the learning. The beautiful part is we can learn many different ways. It doesn't have to look like how it always used to look. So I encourage you to look up Chris Edmondson and his reality pedagogy and pour that into the way you deliver your courses. And I guarantee you attendance will increase because they're going to want to be there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moten, for your time today. Again, the chat is lighting up. Everyone is thanking you for your presentation. It's so much more than I think all of us had anticipated today. It has been beneficial to our mind and to our spirit. We thank you for your inspiration and encouragement and helping us to mind our business while we take care of others. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us virtually. We'll be sure to share this recording as well as Dr. Moten's website and contact information if you need to get in contact with her. As you can see, this would be a great person to bring to your campus and think about ways to support mental health for faculty, staff, students, communities, and families. So Dr. Moten, any last parting words?
Yes. Number one, thank you for having me. But I just have one last thing. I need everyone to look at your hand. Look at your hand and look at my hand. What's different about your hand and my hand? I'm going to tell you because I know we're low on time. Your fingerprint. You are the only person in the world with that fingerprint, which means there was a strategy even when you were created. And so that also means that there's purpose in who you are. And because there's purpose in who you are, you cannot cheat the world out of the gift of you. The world is waiting on your imprint to make impact. And it is important that you mind your mind so that the world will not be cheated out of the gift of your imprint.
Wow. Well, we thank you for encouraging us to have your input to support our input, our personal input, and our impact on the world. So like you said, we've all got that unique handprint and fingerprint that is unique to us. So we don't take for granted what you shared with us today. And I know we will keep it in our minds, hearts, and spirits today and moving forward. I hope we can bring you back in the very near future to share more insight to help us mind our business. So thank you so much, Dr. Moten. Thank you to the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education, to our president, Dr. Kimberly Smith, our board of directors, our past presidents, and those of you, our membership. This is why we do this work, because we know that it supports what we do on our respective campuses and our spaces. So thank you so much, Dr. Moten, for your time today, and we look forward to having you soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll be connecting soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for a great program. Thank you, Dr. Howard Baptiste.
Thank you, Dr. Coel. Thank you, Dr. Moten.
Thank you.
Thank you to our guest. Bravo.
Thank
Outstanding.
you.
Outstanding.
Really was.
Very good. Outstanding moderating.
Thank you, Dr. Coel. We appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moten, for your time today. We really appreciate you. Clearly, when you see this recording, and we'll be sure to share all the information, the chat just had so much insight about all that you've shared with us today. So we are very, very grateful for your time.
I wish I could have seen it. I wanted to.
Yeah, we will. We'll save the chat and share that with you. If that helps, we'll make sure that when we share the recording, we have your website and contact information. And hopefully, I think some folks will be reaching out to their campus leaders to reach out for the Moten Way, because you certainly provided a lot of things for us to think about in terms of prioritizing our own self-care.
Thank you so much for everything. I hope you have an amazing day.
You as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Bye, Dr. Moten. Thank you.
Bye.